The Italian duo had to, in the end, make do with a third-place finish. In the second category, which is all for Ligier JS2Rs as opposed to the JSP4s, which are the prototypes at the sharp end of the field, we have 7 of the JS2Rs entered into the second division, and it was Nathan Biel who took victory for M Racing. In fact, it was a perfect start to the season in the Ligier Endurance Series, with M Racing taking a 1-2 finish. Nathan Biel ahead of Laurent Millara, with the Orges Racing entry for Mathieu Martins and Olivier Pernot finishing in third position. Now, different qualifying session yesterday, which determines a completely different grid. Again, another 15-minute session, which took place under sort of changeable conditions. It was very cloudy and the temperature's not been that high for most of the weekend. Again, we've got some overhanging cloud. Track temperature in the mid-20 degrees Celsius ratio, with ambient closer to 12 or 13 degrees. So for Spanish conditions, relatively chilly here at this fantastic circuit that was built in 1991. It's 4.6 kilometers, the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, and a circuit that we really missed from last year's calendar. We weren't able to get here in the end because of the health crisis, and it meant that we took a second trip to Paul Ricard instead. But brilliant to finally hit Spanish soil with a brand new initiative. And if you don't know too much about the Ligier European Series, well, that's because it's only in its second season for sports prototypes and GT-derived cars. The Ligier JSP4, which is the little sister to the Ligier JSP2 seen in the European Le Mans Series and the P217, and of course in the Michelin Le Mans Cup and the middle class of ELMS, you've got the Ligier JSP3 as well. Well, the P4 sits beneath that, but stands out for its daring and futuristic design with compact and powerful shapes. It's a full carbon monocoque, very strong cars, but reliant very much as well on the aerodynamics that these cars carry. They look so striking, I think, and it's a completely different order, but we've already got drama. Again, this is sort of similar to what happened earlier on, but with a different car. The 17 machine from Arctic Energy is this time off the road, and one of the 2 Lithuanian drivers due to start that, Povilas Jankavicius, installed as the bronze-rated driver. Now, the problem for Povilas is that he's left the road in such a fashion that the rear wheels have dug into the gravel stones, and I don't think Povilas is going to be able to get out of there under his own steam. So this may mean, yes, it does mean a delayed start. The green flag is continuing to wave, but you'll notice the cars are not racing yet. However, the 60 minutes has started to count down. So this next formation lap, which wasn't planned initially, will count as part of the race distance, and this will enable the stranded car of Jankavicius to be recovered, the number 17 JS2R from Arctic Energy. And a little bit of news actually about Arctic Energy and Cool Racing and M Racing. They're all returning for a second season in the Ligier JS2R class. Russian outfit Arctic Energy, run by the driver that is at the wheel at the moment, Povilas Jankavicius. He's back then in the icy colours and planning to be with lead driver Sergei Yegorov, but Sergei not on site this weekend, not due to be racing at Barcelona, instead celebrating a birthday today. So Sergei, if you are enjoying this race via the live stream, then a very happy birthday wherever you are in the world, and we're looking forward to seeing you for the next race at Red Bull Ring in Austria. So instead, there's been a little tweak to the lineup at Arctic Energy, and Egidius Gutravicius being brought in as part of that Russian squad to make it an all-Lithuanian lineup. But it's been a trying time for the team that nearly missed the debut of the campaign due to difficulties associated, obviously, with the current coronavirus situation. And Povilas quoted prior to the race meeting saying that the second season for the Ligier European Series for the Arctic Energy team, very exciting indeed. Nersus Isakian, who He's obviously related to Matevos Izaki and part of the same family. He fought for the JS2R title last year, but sadly can't compete this season, so they have had to rework their driver lineup, and we're very much looking forward to welcoming Sergei Yegorov to the lineup at a later point. Swiss team Cool Racing are back for a second season with the Ligier JS2R, with upcoming Spanish bronze driver Cedric Outremer at the controls. Not the ideal start for Cedric either after a couple of off-track moments, but it's a tricky circuit this, and even though Cedric Outremer hails from Spain, I'm not sure how much experience he's actually had around this particular circuit. Actually, clicking on his name there and the driver biogs does actually say he's French, so some entry lists say that he's a local, others not so much. We will work that all out in the coming weeks. As also returning to the series, the French M Racing team. Now, M Racing well recognised from the ELMS and certainly from the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and M Racing with two of the Ligier JS2Rs, the cars that look very much like a street GT car for returning drivers. Nathan Biel in the 53, already victorious today, and Laurent Millara in the 69 car, who finished second in class. And after coming up short in its bid for the JS2R crown last year, the team setting its sights certainly on the title with the silver and bronze drivers respectively. They're bypassing the chicane, by the way, on the green flag laps. And is there a sign now that this field is starting to shape itself up for a rolling start? It needs to be vaguely in grid formation. And yes, that's exactly what is happening. The pace car, as it is coined for this stage of the day, peels off to the right to the pit lane, and we're about to get rolling. I think it's a relatively untidy start, but the second part of Heat 1 of the 2021 Ligier Endurance Series gets underway now, and they head down towards the first corner. And quite a bit of jostling for position. Again, a big lock-up from the front left corner of the Italian machine from HP Racing by Monza Garage. But we're well underway now for the Ligier European Series, with rounds to come, of course, at exciting venues like Red Bull Ring, Le Castellet, Monza, but we're concentrating on Barcelona. The opening race gave us an idea of who may be quick in this particular race. Will it go the same sort of way? Well, I'll tell you what, the 34 car, which is being started by Antoine Lepescu, who won the opening encounter with teammate Steve Zacchia, he's got it all to do, because he's down in third position in the white, blue and pink car. And right behind him are the jostling leaders for JS2R, Orjas Racing and Olivier Pernot, who finished the earlier race. He's installed as the starting driver for this one then. Nathan Biel, who is the only name against the 53 machine, doing the whole race once more, as is teammate Laurent Millara right behind him. Povilas Jankovicius was able to take up his rightful starting position on the grid despite that gravelly moment, and needing to be recovered in the Arctic Energy car, but Povilas fourth position, just ahead of Cedric Outremer and also Arnaud Samer in the Orjas Racing 25 car, the well-known French stand-up comedian, taking a slight different direction to his career and enjoying motorsport, which he has been doing for several years now, but really a chance to get his teeth into a significant European Championship with this Ligier European Series event. So through the chicane, this is where a 60-minute race can go very, very wrong indeed. It's about keeping your nose out of trouble in the early stages and not getting involved in an incident that may not be of your own making. Over the line go the top three. Alessandro Cicognani for HP Racing, prepared this year by Monza Garage, but what about the fight in the JS2R division? Here comes Nathan Biel on the inside in the white, blue and green car. He's going to get the place on Olivier Pernot. This is exactly the same fight that we had earlier on today. In that hour-long race, these two cars were going absolutely hammer and tongs, and it looks like we're in store for the same sort of situation here, because Nathan Biel got the draft, he got the run down the main straight, and then he really positioned his car smartly to slither up the inside of Olivier Pernot and take the place. And we may well about to witness a place change for third position as well, because Povilas Jankovicius trying to put aside that hiccup on the opening lap, now trying to pressurise the 69 car of Laurent Millara into a mistake. So can he do that as they make their run, that brief down downhill run out of 5, through the kink at 6 and into 7 and 8. So the race leader, Alessandro Cicognani for HB Racing by Monza Garage, number 23, who is in turn ahead of Jacques Nicolet. 2 seconds is the gap, but there's a really big queue behind, and it is pretty much everybody else in second at this stage. Jacques Nicolet, Antoine Lepescu, both for the Les Deux Arbres team. And now the Nicolet car, rather Lepescu, going a touch wide through turn 10. Is that going to allow the leader in JS2R to maybe muscle his way up the order and get ahead of a JSP4, which would be headline news? GT-derived car getting ahead of all-out prototype. The pace between Nathan Biel and Antoine Lepescu looks to be very similar indeed. And Nathan Biel will be absolutely loving this, to be able to take the fight to the third-placed prototype. Nathan Biel, vastly experienced these days, the 21-year-old, having started in the Michelin Le Mans Cup way back in 2017 for the M Racing and YMR squad. Managed to get some decent results that season, which saw him promoted then to the European Le Mans Series, along with staying with Le Mans Cup. In fact, he's done that now for 3 years running, 17, 18 and 19, and then made the move to the Ligier European Series in 2020. Forcing a bit of dominance on the race, though, is Alessandro Cicognani, who showed speed in the earlier race, it has to be said, but they made a slight error in the pit stop in that they were 2 seconds over the permitted time for their combination of drivers. And remember, it varies as to whether you've got silver drivers in your lineup or not. There's a swing of about 20 seconds, which you could either gain or lose, depending on your driver makeup, and that is deliberately weaved into the regulations to even up the driver combinations where possible. Still should be eminently possible for a silver-silver combination to take the win, but you have to a certain degree got to do it the hard way by sitting in the pit lane for, well, sitting stationary for 2 minutes and 5 seconds, and that's not counting the amount of time it takes you to go through the pit lane as well. Down towards turn 10 is the 53 race leader in JS2R, the M Racing Nathan Biel car. Olivier Pernot at the moment holding back Laurent Millara in his M Racing 69 car. Povilas Jankovicius next up, 4th place for Arctic Energy, and then Cedric Outremer, who is so far much neater and tidier than earlier on. It was always going to be tricky, I think, in this opening part to the heat for Cedric, but he's learning from every minuscule error and will be a very rapid driver indeed coming out of this weekend. He learns so much, and so much seat time as well across all of the various sessions for the Ligier European Series. Very close indeed between these two cars for Arnaud Samer and Fabien Delaplace. So Orchus Racing and CTF Performance respectively. The orange car currently in 10th. That's car 95, but definitely there's some speed there from Delaplace. And now just needs to try and force an error from Arnaud Samer just ahead of him. So the 95 car of Delaplace, let me tell you a little bit more about him. 44 years old, hailing from France. He's raced in the SP3 category of the Dubai 24 Hours in the past. So does know little sports cars as far as that's concerned, but has moved neatly into the Ligier European Series. Got to grips with the machinery on offer here swiftly. Out of turn 5 go those two cars then. They're jostling for 9th and 10th places in the JS2R division. Meanwhile, at the sharp end of the GT part of the field then, Nathan Biel continuing to extend his lead up to nearly 3 seconds over Olivier Pernot. Laurent Millara for M Racing is in 3rd, with Povilas Jankovicius 4th. But now this is a great opportunity for Fabien Delaplace to maybe muscle his way up the inside into the newly profiled turn 10. Can't quite manage it on the braking area there. And Arnaud Samer stays out front. What Samer isn't able to do, though, is draw Cedric Outremer into this battle. He'd dearly like the distraction, as far as Fabien Delaplace is concerned, to have another car involved. And maybe what these two cars need to do is just to start to work together with one another rather than scrapping amongst themselves for 9th and 10th places. Try to use the draft from each other to reel in the 8th place car, which is the Cool Racing entry from Switzerland for Spaniard Cedric Outremer, car number 4. And then we would have a three-way dice for what would be 5th in class. Very good times being punched out now by Jacques Nicolet, who, by the way, is driving solo this weekend on initial entry lists ahead of the opening heat of the Ligier European Series. You would have seen Pierre Nicolet as a co-driver for Jacques, father and son duo, in fact, at Les Deux Alpes team, but the 33 crew is just Jacques Nicolet now, with a lot of support from mechanics at L'Arbre Competition, including Jacques Ducon, who is here in a team management role. Smoke again from the rear of that car. Now, we saw this in the opening race. I think that is partly to do with how the tyre wear happens on a JSP4. So rather than having to be worried about anything rubbing from the rear of that car, it's more about the driving style of Alessandro Cicognani, which is very forceful indeed, hard on the brakes, then powering out of the corner, and there's just a little bit of wheel spin here and there, which is generating that smoke. The Michelin tyre, the same across both categories, by the way. Yes, different dimensions required for the two very different type of car, but it's the same compound used throughout the European Series. And quite a softish compound because of the shorter nature of these races. So not the same compound that we find, by the way, in the Michelin Le Mans Cup, for those interested. Very highly praised tyre, though, and you can push in the early stages with every faith that there'll be grip there towards the closing phase as well. By the way, another pit stop required by every single car in this entry, and that is, or cannot take place prior to the 27-minute marker, and has to be done and dusted by 33 minutes. So it's effectively a 6-minute pit stop window. You can pit outside that, but it wouldn't count as your mandatory stop. And once you have chosen to make a stop, if you've got two drivers in your entry, that's the point where you switch over pilots, and the second part of the race is tackled by the other driver. In Laurent Millara and Nathan Biel's case, Jacques Nicolet as well, the driver just stays at the wheel but has to remain stationary. And then it really depends on which drivers are in your lineup. If you've entered with a single bronze or two bronzes, then you can be in and out of the pits as quick as 1 minute and 45 seconds. But if your driver lineup is stronger, i.e. a couple of silvers, then it has to be 2 minutes and 5 seconds in the pits. And that's where the Italians that currently lead this race had that slight glitch. Not sure what went wrong. The team will know an awful lot more about that. They will know how to correct it for the future. And I wouldn't be surprised if HB Racing by Monza Garage now do the rest of the season without that sort of clerical error actually occurring again. Alessandro Cicognani leads then after 15 minutes. And there is still the co-driver, Jacopo Faccioni, who started the earlier race today. So whoever started race 1, it looks like generally is taking the second stint in this second race of the day, the second race of the heat, as this whole weekend is called. Heat 1 being held at Barcelona, with in a month's time Heat 2 at the steep climbs and descent of the Red Bull Ring in Austria. Another very historic track indeed. Very much looking forward to returning to there after the ELMS has had a couple of seasons away from Austria. Down into the first corner goes Alessandro Cicognani. Only 3.5 seconds is the advantage. This is lap 8, but it's a very good lap actually from Cicognani that time around. The fastest of anybody, a 154.864. That's built his race lead to 3.5 seconds now. 1.6 is the gap between Jacques Nicolet in second and Antoine Lepescu in third. And that's extended yet further partway round this 8th lap. So Jacques Nicolet finding speed as well. An absolute best just done through sector 1. Nathan Biel, well, looking more and more comfortable because all of the hard work in the early stages in the number 53 M Racing JS2R has resulted in him building a 7.5 second lead over Olivier Pernot. And Pernot now will be more concerned about where Laurent Millara is and the chance of Millara maybe closing that gap and really putting the pressure on. So it's best to choose your battles. I've found that in observing endurance racing through the years, realising, I'm sure Olivier is at this stage, that he won't be able to catch Nathan Biel unless there's a significant error from the 53 car. So now it's all about trying to conserve that second position if at all possible. Laurent Millara, who started racing in 1997 in the Pro Car division of the Spa 24 Hours, hails from France but did a lot of his early racing in Belgium, and then there was a gap of about 16 years where he concentrated, I think, on business activities, but came back to GT racing then as part of the opening round, or the opening year, of the GT3 Le Mans Cup as it was known then, with Duquesne Engineering. And then as soon as LMP3s became part of the Michelin Le Mans Cup, he was straight in there with M Racing for the 2017 campaign. Close again between two JS2Rs. This is Cedric Otremere closing in on Lithuanian driver Povilas Jankavicius. Povilas normally looking after the day-to-day running of the team, but also part of the driver lineup as well. And remember that this weekend we are missing birthday boy Sergei Yegorov, the Russian driver. So not able to be with us this weekend, Yegorov. But we're looking forward to welcoming Sergei back again from Austria onwards. And that means we've got an all-Lithuanian driver lineup at Arctic Racing. Didn't start this race ideally for Povilas Jankavicius in the gravel trap, but most of that gravel will have been shaken now from the underneath of the number 17 car, and all about trying to defend now from Cedric Otremere, who's also been in the wars at various points today. But these two drivers really do seem to be on the straight and narrow again now. They know where to push and where to take it slightly easier, and that's developing into a very interesting battle for 4th and 5th places in the JS2R category. Likewise, still nose to tail between Arnaud Samer and Fabien Delaplace for Orjas and CTF Performance respectively. The white and the blue of car number 25 from Orjas Racing, and the CTF Performance orange colours of Fabien Delaplace. So Otremere thinking about a move up the inside of the Arctic Energy car of Jankavicius. The gap was there, but Jankavicius left it fairly late to shut the door firmly in Cedric Otremere's face. Same happening right behind in this phase of the competition, and in another 7 minutes or so, all of these cars will need to think about pitting within the 6-minute pit stop window, which will also throw a completely different complexion to this race. Need to try and work out which cars will gain and which will lose according to the pit stop minimum reference time. So Cedric Otremere, who drives on his own for Cool Racing, is a bronze, so he'll be able to take a quick stop. He's battling Povilas Jankavicius, who's also a bronze, so actually he and his teammate Gutravicius will be pitting at about the same sort of speed as well. But Otremere, around the outside there, is able to bag the place. So Povilas Jankavicius able to defend from Cedric Otremere, the Spaniard, for a couple of corners, but then couldn't do so into turn number 1, and Cedric Otremere takes the place. No change further behind. Just trying to work out whether there's maybe a bit of damage being carried on the number 95 car. No, I think that was a trick of the light, actually. The front left corner looking momentarily slightly crumpled, but it is fine. It's the way that the paint job sits on the front of that car, with the black lines either side of the headlight assembly. But is this a chance now for Fabien Delaplace to maybe squeeze up the inside in the CTF Performance machine? Very close indeed at turns 7 and 8, but couldn't make that stick. He will have observed Cedric Otremere getting ahead of Povilas Jankavicius and seen it was possible into turn 1, so maybe that's a good opportunity to try. But Delaplace now jinking to the left. Can he brake later than the 25 car of Arnaud Samer? Not quite. Needed to be further alongside Samer if he was going to make that move stick. And Arnaud Samer, more and more used to this GT-derived car, is really punching his weight here. and not needing to put the elbows out too much. It's not erratic driving from Arnaud Samer by any extent. Fair and fast, but clean to this point. And they thread their way through turns 14 and 15 for the 11th time. Alessandro Cicognani continues to lead the JSP4 division from the two Les Deux Arabes entered JSP4s of Jacques Nicolet and Antoine Lepesque. And again, a very good run this time on the Orchos racing car of Arnaud Samer, who tries to occupy the middle portion of the track as they head into turn 1. Fabien Delaplace spending lap after lap working out where his car is quicker, and he's weighing up where the most potential will come for an overtake. It doesn't want to be a half-hearted affair, because the danger there is that you risk some contact and potentially taking both cars out. So it's better to just sit in the wheel tracks of the Samer car. He hasn't got to rush this. 37 minutes still left on the clock as Samer goes from one side of the track to the other. They're now at turn 5, and the 95 car all over the back of the blue and the white of Orchos Racing. M Racing's Nathan Biel leads the JS2R category by 15 seconds, but Laurent Millara isn't very far away from Olivier Perrineau. That gap is now 2.1 seconds. So it is looking lively for second and third in the JS2Rs, but also for 4th position and for 6th place. You're talking tenths of a second between really each of those positions right now. Very intense indeed. And there's not a million miles between Jacques Nicolet and Antoine Lepesque either, between the two Les Deux Arabes teammates. Closest battle on track, though, is the Fabien Delaplace, I should say, driven CTF performance car, which is in 7th position in the JS2R category. And they will head out of the chicane for another time. Co-drivers busy warming up in the pit garages. Of course, these teams actually occupy awnings and space in the main paddock. They do get the use of the garages from the ELMS teams during this race, so there's the opportunity to do a little bit of limbering up, and you can park a tyre trolley outside. So very much the case that these teams have satellited their way to the pit lane so that they can occupy the working apron right in front of the ELMS teams, who have made a home for themselves in the garages this weekend. Way out onto the green grasscrete there goes Fabien Delaplace for CTF Performance, still trying to force an error from Arnaud Samer. Not forthcoming just yet, though. The Orchos racing car proving stout defence to Delaplace. Nathan Biel looking more and more comfortable for the M Racing JS2R outfit. They are leading again the category for the GT-derived machines, and remember, it was Nathan Biel who won earlier on today. Olivier Perrineau, though, is the fly in the ointment to a certain extent between the two M Racing cars. Perrineau, Millara, only 1.9 seconds between those two cars now, and it's very tight between the two prototypes that are second and third. So the JSP4 podium, the places may be, or the teams that will appear on the podium may be relatively secure. However, what order will they finish in? Because now Jacques Nicolet, who's been being caught by Antoine Lepesque for the last few laps, has huge pressure in his mirrors. The 34 car growing larger and larger, and now Antoine Lepesque, having caught Jacques Nicolet, needing to find a way by. But Nicolet, through the years, has proven himself to be a very tricky man to overtake. Let's see what he got up his sleeve here. Are we going to see maybe a dummy manoeuvre into turn 5, just to sow a bit of a seed of doubt the way of Jacques Nicolet? Well, Antoine not quite close enough just yet to try that manoeuvre. Meanwhile, Nathan Biel, his lead nearly up to 20 seconds now in the JS2R division. So a dominant display from Nathan Biel. He will have to take the medicine at the halfway point. And we are 40 seconds away from the pit lane opening now for all of the cars in the order. You are allowed to pit between 27 minutes and 33 to take your mandatory stop. and it can vary between 1 minute and 45 and 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Again, you work so hard for every 1/10 of a second during the race, and a lot of that can disappear during the mandatory stops. Nothing between second and third places in the JSP4 category. Bit more curb taken there by Anton Lepescu, who is doing the pursuing right now, but Jacques Nicolet stayed clear of the bright yellow sausage curbs, and the stability of the car was the most striking of the two there. I'm not entirely sure that Anton Lepescu's run over the curb actually aided him with forward momentum as they head down towards turn 1. The road drops very slightly away from the two cars that are run out of the same team, Le Douce Arbre and the 33 and the 34 cars, still undecided as to which order they will finish on the podium. M Racing, Orcas Racing, they are first and second in the JS2R division, but what about this place fight for 6th position for Arnaud Tamer and Fabien Delaplace? Really still nothing between them. Again, Lepescu thinks about a move up the inside at turn 5, but does he want to be messing about with an overtake before the pit stops? Is it wiser actually to get the pit stop done and then he can really push to try and wrestle second place away from Jacques Nicolet? And what about Cedric Otremere, who not too long ago was managing to overtake Povilas Jankavicius after many laps of trying. He eventually made that move stick. And Cedric Otremere, as here comes the Lepescu car from a long way back into turn 10. That was definitely a full-blooded attempt at an overtake. Didn't quite come off, but Jacques Nicolet now might have been put off his stride slightly. Didn't seem to be on the ideal line into turn 12. He was a little way off the apex of that right-hander, but has tidied things up on the next couple of corners, and the 33 car will stay in second. But this a moment or two ago, as Nicolet deliberately, I think, wide into turn 10, but leaving the door that wide open, was always going to entice Anton Lepescu for at least an attempt on an overtake. And thankfully, even though it didn't work out, they avoided contact, and we can continue on as if none of that ever happened. First car in the pits is the race leader, Alessandro Cicognani. So these two cars will now be fighting for the race lead, at least for the next few laps. So Jacques Nicolet, Anton Lepescu, first and second overall for the Le Douce Arbre team, and the 23 car into the pit stop with the two silver graded drivers needing to stop for 2 minutes and 5 seconds. And remember, the team have already made a very slight error when it came to the stop today. They unfortunately had to take a pit stop time penalty then in the second half of today's earlier race. And not only do you have to serve the 2 seconds that they missed out on, but it also requires a full drive through the pit lane. So it was very, very costly. And the team, HP Racing by Monza Garage, will be mindful not to make a similar error in this race. But what about this for the race lead? Jacques Nicolet, Anton Lepescu, surely they're going to come in, both of them, on this lap to complete their mandatory stops. But who's going to be in front at the time that that happens? The bulk of the JS2R field is in now, and up the inside from a long, long way back at turn 10. Finally, Anton Lepescu will get the race lead, and it'll mean even more to him now, knowing that this is for the overall lead rather than just for second place, as it was on the earlier occasion that he tried that manoeuvre. So Alessandro Cicognani still being surfaced in the pit lane, and we have a brand new race leader in the form of Anton Lepescu, who that car started from pole position earlier today. One car will pit, the other will stay out. I think Jacques Nicolet is still okay because there's 2 minutes of the pit window remaining open. It's going to be fairly tight to make sure that that car gets in before the 33-minute marker is hit. But as long as he gets round in a 1:58, 1:59, all should be well for the Jacques Nicolet car, which goes back to the race lead. So Antoine Lepescu had the race lead for about the space of 4 corners, And now rejoining the race, new Italian driver at the wheel of the 23 is Jacopo Faccioni, who's just taken over from Alessandro Cicognani. So one Italian out and the other one in, and that will be the way of things to the finish. The 53 car in from the class lead of JS2R, by the way, as well, Nathan Biel, and also into pit road Laurent Millara. Having made his stop is the 24 car for Mathieu Martins. So Olivier Pernot is out and Martins takes charge. He had an entertaining first part of the race earlier today as well, after nearly making contact with one of the JSP4s on the opening lap. You may also remember there was a half spin for Mathieu Martins on the release lap, which he thankfully was able to keep the car out of the wall. Now the 95 has managed to jump ahead of at least one car. That happened during the stop. So, no, it didn't. It happened on the racetrack, I beg your pardon. So the 95 went around the outside of the 17 car of Arctic Energy. That's an incredible overtake to manage to find the pace and the grip on the high side there. Alain Boucher and Nicolas Barrault, in fact, in the CTF performance car around the outside of not Boucher, but of the other Lithuanian driver Egidius Gutravicius, who was just building his Michelin tyres up to temperature. Little did he know that the CTF performance car of Nicolas Barrault was wanting to go around the outside, and contact was just about avoided. Don't often see an overtake around the outside of turn one. You need to be very faithful that there'll be grip out there, and the aero on your car will hold the car to the road surface. So mightily impressive from Nicolas Barrault, who's wasting no time in rolling his sleeves up for the first part of the stint, as Jacques Nicolet, from the lead of the race in JSP4, finally makes his stop. And I think, although don't quote me on it, that he did get into pit road before the 33 minutes were up, and that is crucial, remember, to be in front by the time the clock ticks around at 33 minutes. If you're outside the window, then it will be a 2-minute stop-and-go penalty, which will completely ruin a very good race result, potentially. So Jacques Nicolet is in. We are beyond the 33 minutes now, but that's fine as long as he reached the timing loop before that marker. And the Le Douce Arp team for Jacques Nicolet don't need to worry about a driver change. No Pierre Nicolet competing this weekend, so it will be the bronze staying at the wheel. There has been a driver change, though, in the sister car at Le Douce Arp, with Steve Zakia, the earlier race winner today, taking charge of the 34 car from Anton Lepescu. And now a matter for the time to tick down. The car is released and we'll head back into the motor race. Fingers crossed everything was done to perfection there, and the time will be fine as well, I'm sure. In fact, I'll be able to get a reading on the Jacques Nicolet pit stop time in a moment or two. It was bang on, 1 minute and 45 seconds. So that is absolutely perfect in respect of the Le Douce Arp team and the 33 crew. You would expect nothing less, really, for a team of their level of experience and organisation. So Jacques Nicolet still scored as the race leader. That will change in a moment or two. No, it won't, because here comes Steve Zakia with work to do then in order to reel in Jacques Nicolet. Remember, the difference in pit stop time has really prized open the JSP4 battle. Nicolet versus Zakia, and Faccioni in third position. And I think the cars a little further down in the JSP4 order potentially have the speed to catch Jacques Nicolet. It just remains to be seen whether 25 minutes is quite enough to do that. So we could be in for a stonking finish in this second part of Heat 1 for the Ligier European Series. Out of turn 3 comes the number 53 car for the M Racing crew, and Nathan Biel turning right through that tricky turn 4 on into sector 2. That car goes, and we are back to an M Racing 1-2, which is exactly the scenario we had earlier on today, you may remember. Nathan Biel leading Laurent Millara, and this is after the stops. Now, the one unknown entity is quite how Mathieu Martins and Cedric Outremer are going to get on. in the second half an hour of the race. Remember, we witnessed Mathieu Martin's in part one of the earlier race today, and he was very, very quick. Now he's been given the responsibility for the second half of the race. Let's see whether he can start to challenge the two M Racing cars up ahead of him. The August Racing entry has, for the first task, 7 seconds to close down, and then he can really start to cause a problem for Laurent Millara. Mathieu Martin is rated as a silver driver, as opposed to the guy he's chasing, Laurent Millara, who is a bronze. So on paper, Mathieu Martin should be a little quicker. And we'll see whether the times echo that thought as the 24 car starts to get into a bit more of a rhythm. So this Ligier European Series going from strength to strength as far as its opening season, where it didn't carry any live streaming, but that's a welcome addition for both fans and competitors alike, and really good to have such great venues on the calendar as well. The French constructor Ligier and the ELMS going into partnership last year to present the European Series, and designed to be this single mate series, but for two very different cars: the sports prototype, the JSP4, with its futuristic look, and the GT designed JS2R, although designed exclusively for racing rather than there being a street car equivalent, if you like. More smoke coming from the number 23, I noticed. That's a sign of quite how hard Jacopo Faccioni is pushing in his Monza garage prepared HP racing car, number 23. So the order on the timing screen is Jacques Nicolet ahead of Steve Zacchia, and then Jacopo Faccioni behind. So, beg your pardon, that's actually Nicolet locking up, wasn't it? And then that gap of 9.5 seconds, 9 and a bit seconds, back to Steve Zacchia. And then in his background, in the background of that car, is the Jacopo Faccioni machine for HP Racing. That's the closest of the fights in the JSP4 division, as they head out of turn 16 to complete another lap. That will be 19 laps in the book, and a lead margin for Jacques Nicolet of 8 seconds. But no doubt about it, the gap is coming down between Nicolet, who's just done a 1:57, and Steve Zacchia, a 1:54. So he's finding about 2 seconds a lap on Jacques Nicolet. So in the next 4 to 5 laps, theoretically, the top two in JSP4 will be right together. And if Jacopo Faccioni plays this candidly, he will be able to reel in potentially the two Les Deux Arbres entries as well. So it won't be beyond the surprise to see the top three prototype cars really occupying pretty much the same part of racetrack with about 10 minutes to go. So you can't take your eyes off this one just yet. It could go any which way of the three JSP4s. And likewise in the JS2R division, Nathan Biel and Laurent Millara separated by nearly 9 seconds, but at this stage they're both being caught by Mathieu Martin, who is the quicker of the two at the August Racing number 24. Remember, sharing the car with Olivier Pernot. Pernot is the bronze graded driver by the ACO, with Mathieu Martin's slightly more experienced at August. He's only 19 as well, having done a couple of races in the Ligier European Series last year. Now, did he do the full season? It looks like he did, actually. So we'll have a lot of experience of these cars, the JS2R that is, at Ricard. We also visited Spa-Francorchamps, Monza and the Algarve International Circuit at the end of the year. It has been quite a learning curve for many of the drivers, though, this weekend, because they just simply didn't know the Barcelona circuit, the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, to give it its official title. It's often a favourite among drivers and competitors alike, but it does take a little bit of unlocking, and that will have been a gradual process throughout Heat 1, the opening competition of the 2021 European Series. A squirrely moment for two of the JS2Rs there, coming out of turn 14, with Arctic Energy battling with August Racing. So this is Egidius Gutarevicius with Alain Boucher, the other driver in the 25 white and blue. Boucher French-born and bred, but has recently moved to Dubai, so actually carries the United Arab Emirates nationality on the car and on his racing licence. And we're now just getting news of an infringement for car 34. So Steve Zakia already up against it in trying to catch Jacques Nicolet. Well, it looks like they've cut the pit stop short by 4 seconds. And therefore, the 34 car is going to have to come back in to serve another pit stop and to serve the extra 4 seconds that didn't get done in the first attempt. So any seconds you are under the bar by, you then have to come in and serve again. But of course, it's much more costly than that because it also requires you to drive the full length of the pit lane and at only 60 kilometers per hour. So it's going to be 40-45 seconds, I think, lost by Steve Zakia. And that very much brings Jacopo Faccioni back into the equation with the chance of getting a second place finish rather than third, which is where the Italian HP Racing JSP4 is currently running. M Racing from M Racing in the JS2R category, with Mathieu Martins having just set his best lap of the race, a 1:57.027. That was also better than any of Olivier Pernod's efforts in the same car. So it's a 1:57.027, again faster than the two M Racing cars up ahead, with Cedric Outremer for Cool Racing in the 1:59.3s. So that car probably on course for a fourth place finish. Going to struggle to do much better than that, as Nicolas Barrault in the CTF Performance car number 95 running in fifth place ahead of Egidius Gutaravicius and Alain Boucher running in seventh place in the number 25. So a penny for Steve Zakia's thoughts right now, and not that he could have done a great deal about it. Again, it is down to the team, Les Douze Arbres, maybe slightly off with the calculations. It was HP Racing making a similar error earlier on today, and now their rival team within JSP4 come up with a slightly fumbled pit stop. Maybe the signal to get going again came too early. There was a misread on the stopwatch. It could be all manner of reasons why, but 4 seconds is a decent chunk to be underneath. It really only needs to be a thousandth of a second too fast, and you would have to come in and serve that extra time. But the 34 car, currently running second, will now have to focus on making sure that the car finishes third and no worse. We might be in a scenario here where actually the leading JS2R is able to get ahead of one of the JSP4s, which doesn't happen very often. Just over 15 minutes of this hour-long race to go, plus the extra lap, which can always spice things up. Not unknown to have a place change for a crucial position on the final circuit of this 4.6 kilometre track at Barcelona. As now moving from right to left and right again. It's a tough start to this lap because of the positioning of the car. You've got to muscle it from one side of the road to the other and then back again. As here is Steve Zakia, and remember, Steve took the car over. He will have gone when he was instructed to, and the Swiss then getting the news either via the pit board or on the team radio they would have to come in and serve a 4-second penalty. That has now been done. The car returns to the motor race and Steve Zakia loses a place. Will he lose anything more? Well, that's the car he's trying to stay in front of for third position overall, and I reckon Nathan Biel's got ahead. So the 53 car, the leader in the JS2R division for M Racing, is now ahead of one of the JSP4s. This really doesn't happen too often at all in the Ligier European Series. Nose to tail between 69 and 24. This is Mathieu Martins, as I said, being quicker than Laurent Millara. He's been spending the last few laps reeling in the white and blue car with the orange detailing, and is now right with Laurent Millara, who's going to have to drive defensively for the next 15 minutes. And I'm not sure that Mathieu Martins is going to be held back for that long. Let's hope it doesn't end in any contact, because these are beautifully looking cars. We don't want them damaged in any way. But at the same time, Mathieu Martins probably sniffs the potential to win this race. And it's Laurent Millara and ultimately Nathan Biel, who stands in his way. Well, he's got to deposit the 69 car as soon as he can. Got a really good run on the 69 machine out of turn 5, through the kink at 6, which isn't really a corner. Well, you turn the wheel, but you don't slow in any way. Then you leap on the brakes into turn 7, and that awkward kink through 8 on the exit. Now almost to the inside line when Mathieu Martins to muscle his way by, but Laurent Millara wise to that fact, and just ahead he remains. They'll head towards turn 10, the reprofiled La Caixa corner, with M Racing up against Aarhus Racing. But this is a great sign of things to come, so long as these guys are up for a full season of competition, and this is very much whetting the appetite in that respect. Lots of curb being taken by Mathieu Martins to use every bit of available road and then some. There's a bit of a lock up there on the front left corner as well. More indication of how hard Mathieu Martins is pushing. Can't afford to be doing that too often, because his front left Michelin will start to resemble a indented coin rather than the round object it started to be. Started at the beginning of the race. These tyres do take a bit of punishment, but the problem is you encourage one flat spot, and then it's very easy to add to that if you continue to drive in that vein of form. But he may well have the place this time, so long as he can get the car stopped at turn 1. There is a muted golf clap down on the pit wall there from Aarhus Racing, because Aarhus now up to the second place position after a really good overtake. Had to work hard on that on Laurent Millara, but it eventually worked out that turn 1 was the best place to do it. Very good run down the main straight, and Mathieu Martins will now have to find 12 seconds on Nathan Biel. Not beyond the realms of possibility, but he's going to have to close to the tune of a second a lap. Quite a big ask. Let's see whether he's capable of it. And we'll allow him a lap or so just to get into that clean air in an attempt to really get his head down then, and it probably requires qualifying pace from Mathieu Martins. Big lock-up again from the race leader, Jacques Nicolet. It's also still nose-to-tail between Egidius Gutaravicius in the Arctic Energy car, the Lithuanian for the Russian squad, ahead of Alain Boucher for the other Aarhus Racing crew. And Aarhus over the line now in 7th place in class. Very nearly some overlapping. Front wheels of the number 25 basically level with the rears of Arctic Energy, but they can't get turned in side by side. And I think that was Alain Boucher thinking that discretion the better part of valour, at least for the time being. He's still got 11 minutes to work with, so no need to just force the issue there. He can try and fashion a slightly better opportunity and do it again in a couple of corners' time. Again, more than a look though to the inside, I notice. Big lock-up a moment or two ago, and that was for Jacopo Faccioni in the 23 car, trying to keep it tight through turn 14, and again asking a bit too much of the Michelin tyres beneath him. Michelin and Ligier in a strong partnership for the second year running for the Ligier European Series. Michelin supplying all of the tyres for both categories. And by the way, whilst on the subject of tyres, there is a free set up for grabs for the car that sets the fastest time across all of the sessions during this weekend's heat. So if you're fastest in the race, or in qualifying, or indeed in free practice, that particular team and that particular car gets a set of tyres as a reward, and that is the case in both JSP4 and JS2R. There's also then an additional set of tyres that is awarded via a random draw once the fastest team has been removed. So you can't win double set of tyres. The first set goes to the fastest team, and then everybody else that is left goes into a draw effectively and gets a set of tyres going their way as well. So an exciting time, and it also helps a little bit with budget too, with the championship supplying that free set of tyres, purely rewarding a bit of loyalty. Jacques Nicolet leading the way then by 8 and a bit seconds in the JSP4 division, ahead of Jacopo Faccioni. Let's hope he's still got some tyres left beneath his JSP4, as now jinking to the inside and looking for maybe an overtake for 6th position in the JS2R category was Alain Boucher again, but Gutravicius saw him coming and kept the car right in the middle of the road in order to defend. other close battles. Mathieu Martins hasn't been able to shake Laurent Millara fully. The one thing that does look slightly more secure as far as Nathan Biel is concerned is that leading position in the JS2R category, though, with M Racing number 53 leading from Mathieu Martins, and the gap is still 12 seconds, so that hasn't really altered in the 4 minutes since I last spoke about it. Nathan Biel looks to have just about the measure then on that chasing car from Aarhus Racing. But Laurent Millara showing signs that he might want to come back here and offer a fight back for second place on the podium. Laurent Millara had dropped to about 2 or 3 seconds away from Martins, but it's back to 1 and a bit seconds now. So that's not done yet, and Laurent Millara, as if he's listening to me, sets that car's best first sector, a 33.9. So that's definitely one for us to keep an eye on. And there's only 0.4 of a second between Gutrovicius for Arctic Energy and Alain Boucher for Aarhus Racing. They're competing for 6th and 7th in the JS2R division. By the way, fastest lap of the race so far was set by Steve Zakia on lap 20. So during this particular stint for Steve, sadly, I think after that lap was set, Steve had to come in for the extra bit of pit stop that he didn't serve first time around. So that's probably broken Steve Zakia's rhythm. Steve in amongst the champions in the very first year of the Le Mans Cup, by the way, or the Le Mans Series, I should say. First ever year of the Le Mans Series, which subsequently became the European Le Mans Series, was 2004. And Steve Zakia was a champion driving a Ferrari 550 GTS Maranello when he competed in the GTS category as part of the Labre competition lineup, scoring 35 points. So really his career has gone a little bit full circle to find himself back on the ACO rules weekend via such prestigious events like the 24 Hours of Spa for GT cars these days. He's also raced at the Nürburgring as well. So Steve Zakia, vastly experienced and running currently in 3rd place in the number 34 car, the second of 2 entries from Les Deux Alpes, which is the driving school, certainly associated with Labre Competition. And the plan is that the new wave of driving school students can potentially find a pathway, and a fairly comfortable pathway, into the Ligier European Series. And that presents your first rung on the ladder then to potentially move further up to Michelin Le Mans Cup and the ELMS. And why not Le Mans after that? Cool Racing's Cedric Outremer outbraking himself into turn 14 on that lap, but didn't stray too far away from the edge of the track. Certainly, thankfully for him, didn't find anything solid, nor a gravel track, so the recovery process was pretty simple for Cedric Outremer. And Outremer back in the race, running 4th for Swiss outfit Cool Racing. Meanwhile, at turn 12, still no let-up in the fight between Egidius Gutrovicius and Alain Boucher. They are absolutely together still. There doesn't seem to be much difference in the speed of these two cars either. Maybe a slight advantage at times for the 25, but then a couple of corners later the 17 will respond, and vice versa. So will Alain Boucher run out of time and run out of opportunities to muscle that 6th place away from Egidius Gutrovicius? Now a long lingering look at the inside. This is the great chance then for Boucher, and he's not going to be invited twice there. Down at turn 1, another spectacular overtake for an Aarhus Racing car. We saw similar from Alain's teammate Mathieu Martins earlier on in the 24 car, the white and red machine. Well, this time the turn of the white and blue of Aarhus Racing, and Alain Boucher gets in front, but there's drama. There is drama for Jacques Nicolet on the final lap. He spun the car, and that is the race lead gone, I think. Jacopo Faccioni was 6 seconds away, but this to be confirmed in a moment. That's the race lead. Jacopo Faccioni for HB Racing by Monza Garage will take the race lead with only 5 minutes on the clock remaining. And all of a sudden, was that the pressure starting to tell on Jacques Nicolet? He lost the car in dramatic fashion up the curb at turn 9, and right across the face of Jacopo Faccioni, who reacted brilliantly and with speed to drive around the Jacques Nicolet spinning car and ensure that he will potentially go on and win this race. So it's all kicked off in the closing stages. We've got to 5 minutes to go with Jacques Nicolet. Yes, he was being caught, but I would argue he had it in his grasp, this race win. It was just about under control, but it just goes to show you don't necessarily need to be attempting an overtake. You just need to be there applying some scoreboard pressure, applying some timing screen pressure, and it looks like that is what's told for Jacques Nicolet, who half spins at turn 9, and it means that La Douce Arbe, who finished first and second in the earlier race today, probably their best now will be second and third, as Jacopo Faccioni managed to go to the low side of the spinning Jacques Nicolet car, desperately fumbling around in the cockpit there to apply first gear. You can do that relatively quickly with the semi-automatic paddle gear shifts that these JSP4s carry, but by that point, as soon as first gear was located, Jacopo Faccioni had already found a way through the spinning car, and the Italian, assuming he now doesn't make an error, should go on to win this race, to be our second different winner from 2 races. So drama, high drama in the closing stages of this race, and it just goes to show that no matter what sort of an advantage you have, the race is not over until you cross that line and see the checkered flag. We're still a little way away from that happening. 2.5 minutes left on the clock, plus the extra lap, and Jacopo Faccioni, now the tables have turned because Jacques Nicolet is doing the chasing for La Douce Arbe now. And is there still enough performance in those Michelin tyres, which will have taken a pounding because of the spin? Can Jacques Nicolet extract the necessary pace to take the fight to the new race leader, Jacopo Faccioni and HP Racing? The next question is, how close is Steve Zacchia to maybe causing a problem for Jacques Nicolet? That looks to be a controllable gap, actually. It's 19 odd seconds, so I don't think that's in any danger of changing between the 2 teammates. Nathan Biel and M Racing's number 53 car enjoying an 11-second lead over Mathieu Martins, but generally speaking, Martins is quicker than Nathan Biel. 0.3 of a second Martins found last time around. Laurent Millara for M Racing in the number 69 car is third. Cedric Ultramare for Cool Racing is in 4th, and 5th place the CTF performance car of Nicolas Béraud, as out of the final sequence of corners to complete another lap. This will be lap 28 for the JS2R. Goes Nathan Biel. And what sort of time do we have left on the clock? There's a minute to go. In the middle sector, Jacopo Faccioni right now for HP Racing. Depending on how quickly he goes on this final lap, it'll either be last lap board this time around or the next time by. And I'm just trying to work out how long it's going to take Jacopo Faccioni to reach the end of this particular lap. He's exiting turn 9 now, and the gap's only 3.1 seconds back to Jacques Nicolet. So is that coming down at all? No, if anything, it is slightly extending. So Jacopo Faccioni looks to have a bit more tyre life, quite possibly, courtesy of Monza Garage, who prepare his HP Racing JSP4. Nathan Biel into the awkward approach at turn 5. He's got the distraction of a slower car up ahead as well, but that will be lapping a car rather than needing to overtake it for position. Now 7, 6, 5 seconds left on the clock. So this time around, Jacopo Faccioni will get the last lap board. One more lap to go, 4.6 kilometres and 1 minute and 55 seconds there or thereabouts. And that is confirmed now on my timing screen. On to the last lap. Jacopo Faccioni with really not very far away Jacques Nicolet, but I think it's going to prove just a bit too much for the Frenchman. Although, having said that, the gap's come down again. 2.5 seconds the margin between the HP Racing by Monza Garage car and the La Douce Arbe entry number 33, with sister car of Steve Zacchia still third. Then in the JS2R division, it's still Nathan Biel ahead of Mathieu Martins, but last time around Martins was 1.4 seconds faster than Biel. little bit of that will be Nathan just backing off and driving within himself, realising he doesn't have to push like crazy on this final lap. He can rein things in a little bit, knowing that he's got that 8-second advantage. Laurent Millard at 3.7 seconds away, although that grows to 4.4 through the last split. So I would say in the JS2R division, the top three are more or less confirmed. It was close earlier on between Alain Boucher and Egidius Gutierrez, but that gap of 9 seconds has sort of stabilised as well. So it's most lively for the top two places. These two cars heading into turn 10. The 23 of HB Racing by Monza Garage and the Le Douce Arbre entry of Jacques Nicolet. And not really the most conventional line through turn 12, it has to be said, from Jacopo Faccioni, but he made it work. Then a brief dab of the brakes to arrest the speed of the car into turn 13. Need to be neat and tidy through 14 and 15, but it doesn't need to be qualifying pace because he has this 2 and a bit second advantage. And for the first time this season, in the second part of Heat 1, it will be the Italian outfit of HP Racing by Monza Garage who take victory. You can hear the whoops and the hollers on pit road. That's how much it means to this Italian outfit HP Racing, to Jacopo Faccioni, who did the second stint, and to Alessandro Ciccognani, who I think was making the most noise actually on the pit wall there, to congratulate his teammate. They're two silver-rated drivers. They would have had to have done the overtake on the racetrack, but Jacques Nicolet really presented the race win on a plate to Jacopo Faccioni after the spin at turn 9, and Jacques Nicolet couldn't control the car in time. It resulted in a sideways spin, him sitting briefly broadside to Faccioni, but he reacted very well indeed, overtook the stranded car and took the race win. In JS2R, it is another victory to M Racing. That's 2 out of 2 for Nathan Biel, ahead of the chasing Mathieu Martins, who really did impress in the second stint for that car, number 24, after it was started well by Olivier Pernot. Third position to Laurent Millard. So M Racing come away from the first heat of the year with a 1-2 in race 1 and a 1-3 in race 2. Cédric Outremer for Cool Racing will finish in 4th place ahead of Nicolas Barrault for CTF Performance. Alain Boucher and Egidius Gutierrez provided a really good fight. Okay, it might have been for 6th and 7th in the JS2R category, but it was no less fraught, it has to be said, and the 25 car did eventually managed to beat to the line the 17 car as we await Cédric Outremer and Nicolas Barrault to cross the line. A reminder of, again, a frenetic 60 minutes courtesy of the Ligier European Series. It started with side-by-side JSP4s after a fairly untidy start, it had to be said, but all the positions were checked and no penalties had to be handed out. Good getaway from Olivier Barrault to start with, but wasting no time at all, the blue and the white JS2R of Nathan Biel muscled his way to the lead of that division and kind of never looked back, actually, on course to a class victory. Nathan Biel finishing ahead in the end of Mathieu Martins and Laurent Millard. This was neat and tidy into the first corner from Cédric Outremer. After lining the 17 car up for a number of laps, in the end, Povilas Jankavicius couldn't hold back the machine behind despite his very best efforts. It was nose to tail for quite a long portion of the race between the two teammates from Le Douce Arbre and the 33 and the 34 car. And then the 34 came in for its scheduled pit stop. But also, remember, it had to come in and soak up the extra 4 seconds. Steve Zacchia getting the message that everyone hates to hear via the team radio, that we've cut the pit stop short. You'll have to come in and serve those extra few seconds, which ultimately took the victory away from Steve Zacchia and from Antoine Lepescu. And this was the big moment, the hinge point, if you like, in the second race of the day, where Jacques Nicolet half spun at turn 9, and it meant that the car in his pursuit, Jacopo Faccioni, only really had to keep the car on the straight and narrow, carry the speed through turn 9, and the race lead and ultimately the race win would be Faccioni's and Cicognani, and they were so happy by the end of it. For HB Racing and Monza Garage, big congratulations to those drivers, and I'm sure Jacques Nicolet will be kicking himself after that. So a delight to call the opening 2 races of the Ligier European Series. That is Heat 1 done and dusted, but it's going to be a busy season. Remember, this endurance series follows every step of the way of the European Le Mans Series. It is the Red Bull Ring in Austria next weekend of the 14th and 15th of May, with Le Castellet, Monza, Spa and Portimao still to come. Make sure you join us in about a month's time in Austria. From Johnny Palmer and the Ligier European Series, it's bye-bye for now.
Voilà. Et là, tu me vois? Avec ces photographes qui sont toujours au milieu. Hein? C'est parti de la beauté du métier, n'est-ce pas? C'est bon pour s'en passer. Je suis content d'avoir eu voté tous les jours. Oui, surtout quand tu as de la photo. Moi aussi, je suis parfait. T'es parfait.
Tu vas là nous la jouer à la flamand, toi? Tu vas nous la jouer à la flamand? Alors, c'était mieux? Ouais.
Tranquille.
Ah bah ça va alors.
On a géré les pneus.
D'accord. Vous avez changé un peu de setup?
Ouais.
D'accord.
Changé un petit peu, mais c'est surtout moi qui ai conduit à 2 ou 3 secondes du temps.
Oui.
Pour garder des pneus. En fait, j'ai commencé là, c'est tout. C'est Mathieu qui a fini. Donc, plutôt que d'être à
Donc
l'attaque.
t'as levé un peu pour pas niquer le coup.
Du coup, à 2 secondes à peu près.
Ouais, quand même.
J'ai levé tranquille et tout ça. Et puis du coup, je lui ai laissé un peu de pneus. On verra.
Vous avez d'autres essais prévus avant la prochaine?
Bon, on va peut-être en faire.
Ouais, pour
Ouais,
voir
je pense
cette histoire de setup là, ouais. Ouais, bien sûr. C'est quoi comme moteur sur ces voitures?
C'est des V6 3 litres 7 Ford.
Ah, Ford, ouais, d'accord.
C'est pas lui qui filme là, parce que sinon je gâche le...
Bah là pour le moment il filme pas.
Je ne sentais pas comme ça.